Welcome to the Mantic Universe podcast. Today we are talking about Epic Warpath, which is the upcoming small-scale mass battle game in the Warpath universe. As you've probably noticed, I'm not Chris, I'm Clem, and for this episode I'm joined by Matthias, who's been in the MUP galaxy for a while now.
Hello, Clem. Nice to be here.
Yeah, I'm very happy that you're joining me today for this new series about Epic Warpath. And so today's episode is really just like a presentation of what we intend to be a series of episodes. So this definitely is the first one, but not the last. And give you guys kind of an overall introduction to what Epic Warpath is and how we're getting ready for it, like what we like about it and why we really are excited about the upcoming Kickstarter pledges, which should be delivered sometime in March, maybe later, depending on how things are going for Mantic.
Yes. March was the original date given by the Kickstarter, and as always, add a month or two for any upcoming delays, so...
It can happen, yes. I mean, Mantic has been pretty good overall for this, but obviously this is a very big Kickstarter, so things can go wrong or take slightly longer.
Usually the English stuff should work out fine. It's anything that goes with translations and different languages might take a little bit longer.
Sometimes there are things like this that happen, absolutely. All right, so why are we even making separate episodes for Epic Warpath? Because usually we do the MUP monthly that kind of covers everything in the Mantic universe, which is kind of how this podcast started. But the reason is we want sometimes to dive a bit deeper on some topics, and we also think it might help you, listener, to select a little bit what you're interested in, because obviously if you have no interest in fantasy and then you have 2 hours of us rambling about Kings of War and all you want to hear about is Epic Warpath, then it doesn't really work. Versus these episodes are thematic, and so for all of you Epic Warpath curious or enthusiasts, we're here. And it's still pretty much a Mantic Universe podcast episode, right? It's just friends.
We should cover everything.
Right, so we cover a bit of everything. So we'll cover everything Epic Warpath in this series of episodes, and it's just friends discussing what they love, toy soldiers and games and so on. And it's just on those episodes really about Epic Warpath. And we don't really have plans for a given regularity, like this is not a monthly episode about Epic. It's more anytime we feel like talking about something epic, we'll record an episode, and that's about it. And the last piece of information about these episodes is who does them? Well, me to begin with, because I'm the most excited one of the MUP crew about Epic Warpath. And I also plan to have guests and potentially invite you guys to join if you have something you want to share or discuss about Epic. And as you've heard already, I have another host today, Matthias. I think that's the first time that you're on MUP. So why don't we hear a little bit more about, your gamer's past and where you come from and what you do and what your favorite food is and so on and so forth and everything. Tell us everything about you, Matthias.
Yeah, everything that I can share on the podcast. So I'm Matthias, coming from Austria, currently living in Carinthia, the southern part. And, for starting a little bit longer with my hobby career, I started with scale models as a kid, like the building and painting stuff, and then later got started with friends from school with Warhammer Fantasy, the 5th edition, so should feel old now. And as time goes by, started playing with the sci-fi games, Battlefleet Gothic, 40k of course. Then got back to fantasy again with edition changes. Later on, when I think it was late 7th edition of Warhammer, things didn't feel right, and also the location changed. We moved a little bit and started playing War Machine Hordes, and ended around with Kings of War for Fantasy around 2014-15, I think. and also dipped my toes into various other games like Battletech, Full Thrust, X-Wing, Flames of War, Bolt Action, and also the early versions of Warpath. I think there was the second edition where we were very active once in the very old Mantic forum. Some might remember that got closed because I think of a server or software error for some time. And now mostly playing at home with my kids, doing family things, and currently my main game is again Kings of War with Dead Zone and Firefight as side games. Little
Nice.
bit of worms.
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting palate cleanser, like something you do on the side. So you never really stopped tabletop since you started when you were a teenager, right? Like there's no big break or something, like a few years. You've played all throughout since you were a teenager. That's cool.
Kind of. The big breaks were usually when a new game started with building and painting a new army. So you had like half a year of break where there were no gaming, of course, because things needed to be prepared. So I really value now stuff that can get on the table really fast. Like Dead Zone. That was also the first Mantic game I actively played in first edition, because it was just a setup or a concept with easy to set up. You got the map in the box, you got a terrain that doesn't need to be glued. And it better is glued because the concept didn't really work out in the beginning, but it was really this thing, stick it together, get everything on a table and start playing with easy to learn rules where I don't need 4 or 5 games to actually get
what's going on and
yes.
Start having fun with it. Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, and you've been basically hanging around on the MUP Discord server and Facebook. So we've been chatting for a while, I feel, but just not recording episodes yet. But I'm very happy that you joined now.
I think Walter recruited me because we met at the Clash of Kings UK in 23. I had some nice talking, stayed in contact. Then he started the narrative MUP episodes and kind of recruited me to make narrative content, and somehow now the first episode is about Warpath.
That's interesting. I think also we'll hear you in other episodes because we've been discussing about other concepts. So that's pretty cool. All right. What about we get back to the topic of this episode, which is Epic. And I guess in case you've missed it, we can go through a few facts and elements about the game itself. So the official pitch from Mantic, if I read the Kickstarter page, is command vast armies of aliens and humankind on distant worlds in the new epic scale miniature games by Matt Gilbert and Alessio Cavatore. So that's interesting. It's obviously a 10mm mass battle game in the Warpath universe, right?
Kind of.
I mean,
10 mil is always a little bit controversial because it's like what's the scale size, what is the model size, and I think in the beginning there was a lot of comments that it's 12 mil or 10 mil, with the Enforcer being a 12 mil tall model, but the scale is still 10 mil. So the important message was it's not a proprietary scale. It should work with any existing 10, 12 mil terrain and models out there that people already have. So
I think the important part is exactly that, right? Like if you have some terrain, or if you buy terrain or pieces from someone else doing something that is planned for a 10 mil game, it should work. If it's a 6 mil game, it might look a bit weird. And 15 also might look a bit weird. So it kind of places things. And I think also scales are always kind of a weird thing, because obviously vehicles are scaled slightly differently. Like a 28 mil vehicle is not scaled the same way as a 10 mil vehicle. Like vehicles are potentially a bit smaller depending on what you want to achieve, and so on and so forth. So it really just is a big picture impression of what it is.
Yeah.
All right. And so where does this game come from? So I thought it would be interesting to go back, in time and go through the history of Warpath. So as you mentioned already, a long time ago, there was an actual Warpath, so the sci-fi game from Mantic. And to be honest, I wasn't a Mantic person back then. I wasn't even in tabletop hobby anymore. And I don't know much about it. What I remember is it was 28mm scale, and it's kind of like Kings of War in space, so to speak.
Yeah. The first edition was basically Kings of War in space, like a very close copy of the first edition Kings of War rules. Also with the same factions, because we started with dwarves, elves, and orcs in Kings of War, and we got the very same ones for Warpath in those days.
I think we can keep all of the, history, introspection, exploration about the old version of Warpath for episode, for a future material for a future episode. And so where the current Epic Warpath comes from really is the first time we've heard about it was a message in August 23 on the Mantic blog that basically is named Epic Warpath Needs You. And it was basically the writer said, Ronnie asked me 18 months ago to look at Warpath again, and then Legion Imperialis happened or was announced, and so we need to pause and think. I'm paraphrasing naturally like the blog post, but you can go and check it out. And so what happened was Mantic already was working on this 10 mil sci-fi game, like redoing Warpath, and then they realized that GW was announcing basically their own Epic version coming back. And then being the small guys, they got scared and wanted to hear about what the community wanted to get from Mantic. And so they distributed the poll, and it was extremely successful from what I understand. Like a lot of people said, yes, we absolutely want a 10 mil sci-fi game from you guys. And so Mantic decided, great, we'll just go ahead and do it. And so they started a Kickstarter campaign in February of last year, which was, I think, pretty successful. There were over 2,500 backers and £400,000 collected. And they did a really massive campaign, right? Like there's 8 factions at launch. All of it is new plastics or resculpts of ST and resin or STL versions available, everything, right?
It was quite an interesting thing, because at the beginning there was the big question if you're going to see hard plastics or not, or just resin and 3D prints. And it became a very good mix, I think, with the Kickstarter, to have the basic boxes to be plastics with STL add-ons.
Absolutely. I think really them asking the community pretty early on, like, hey, we want to do this. What do you think? We have 3 different options, like either STL only or plastic only, or I don't remember what the options were in the poll that circulated. And I think they gathered enough, evidence of what people wanted to be confident about, okay, we can put out the investment to prepare a big Kickstarter and directly start with, it wasn't 8 factions directly, right? Like some of them were stretch goals. But I think they had in mind already, we will do 8 factions, 4 of them will be stretch goals. And so that kind of sets the tone for the whole campaign, so to speak.
Yeah, so Matt Gable said he planned out to have 8 factions in the rule book in the beginning. And if everything gets plastics model, depends on how well the Kickstarter goes. So
right. So he did well, which is good news. So obviously that was 1 year ago, right? And since then we've got, I would say, quite regular updates with some artwork and renders of new skulls and so on. What did you think of it? Like, did you follow it closely? Like, did you see all of the renders and artwork?
I mean, I was regularly watching what news are up, especially for the renders, because we got the first 4 factions were kind of in development during the Kickstarter campaign, so we got already updates during those, and the later were coming, especially the nameless, were just there as a name at the beginning, not really anyone knowing what will come. So I was very curious to look forward to those renders when they came out, like seeing the concept arts they had, and then how the concepts turn into renders. And yeah, it's amazing how the things developed for them.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, the more recent, like the latest stretch goals were added later and worked perhaps a bit less than Enforcers and Plague, which are the two core factions, I would say, or like the ones they really started with.
The poster
and so
boys.
It's been, yeah, exactly. It's been interesting to see what they've been doing with it since then. And another thing that I want to add to the timeline in the background is right around the Kickstarter, I believe, Mantic did a call to playtesters, and I applied, and I was lucky enough to be part of it. So I've been playing Epic Warpath for almost a year now. Not so much in the past few months because the playtesting is now paused because the game is in production. But the first half of 2024, I played Epic Warpath quite a few times and different iterations of the rules and the army list and so on and so forth. So I have a bit of an idea of how the game actually works already now before the rulebook is officially published and available.
Yeah, you were one of the lucky ones who got into the playtesting.
Yes.
So you know a lot more about rules than I do, because I just looked at the alpha rules. They, at the beginning of the Kickstarter, they shared a document about the basic concepts, what they want to do, that already looked very promising, just to get an idea that this thing works.
Yeah. And I mean, I think these concepts are still pretty much here, and the playtesting is always about the details, so like some wording on some paragraphs of the rules, and then obviously adjusting the units, point costs, or some of the rules like the typing. Hey, this is a GCPS veteran. Does the profile work or not? Or does it not give the right idea? Or is it just not interesting at all when you look at the rest of the army list and so on and so forth? That's what playtesting is doing. But the core idea of how the game actually works, this is already visible from both the alpha rules that might still be available online if you're extremely curious, and also the blog articles that Mantic published basically a year ago when the Kickstarter was about to go live.
I think Mantic is very good at catching the right feeling for a game setting in general. Yes. So they really know when they want to make an army game in the small scale that really feels like an army you commanding. They are really getting that with the rules.
I agree. I think also what I enjoy in general about their games is the rules have the appropriate level of complexity. They're not too complex that they become just, impossible to, get up to speed with unless you play one game every week, and I've played 10 games. And at the same time, they're not trivial games that after you've played 5 times, you're kind of bored. So for me, it's the perfect balance also on that level. But
I think that the balance here, it's not about learning the rules, it's about playing the game. And the complexity really comes when you play it and not by just reading through the rule book. And I think this is also when I say, as a casual gamer that plays at home with kids, where say you get a game once a month or every other month, or even pause for half a year because other things in life interrupt you. It's easy to come back. You don't need to read the rules again to know what's going on. It's just put things on the table and you remember while you're playing. Maybe the first phase or first turn isn't very clear, but it flows.
It still works
very fast.
Absolutely. No, that's you're absolutely right. That's a strength of Mantic Games in general. So maybe to get back to Epic and the concepts of the game. So, as you guys probably know, Mantic already has 2 sci-fi games. So, first one is Dead Zone, and it's soon
because
3
Star
games.
Saga is kind of still around.
That
and
is
Red
true,
Board.
although you cannot buy it on their website. So it's a bit difficult. So if you go on their website now and want to buy a sci-fi game, well, technically you have also the Advent calendar option, right? But if we stick to their main available games today, you have Dead Zone, which is the skirmish level one. So it's a team of 10 or so specialists and like individual fighters. And then you have Firefight, which is the squad level game with maybe a couple of vehicles, like a tank or a flyer, and so on. And then squads of, let's say, 3 to 20 fighters potentially. And both of these games are 28mm scale. And so Epic Warpath comes on top of these two and brings a different level. Like it is a 10mm game, and it's still played on a 4x4 or 6x4 table, so a large table. And what it allows you to do from a gaming perspective is to bring in a lot more vehicles. Because on 28mm scale, on a 6x4, if you want to have 5 tanks, I mean, Firefight does it with the, what is it called, Armageddon or whatever is called the special gaming mode. But it is kind of difficult to really make it work. Versus 10mm on a big table, well, you can have a bunch of vehicles, light and heavy vehicles, flyers, super heavies. So yeah, kind of a different scale of battle, so to speak. Not just scale of miniatures, but also the scale of the battle.
The game mode you were looking for is Annihilation.
Annihilation, yes.
Firefight, and it's tricky. Firefight is, how to say, if you command a platoon with a tank in support or a tank platoon with infantry in support, there is a lot to do with micromanagement, with organizing your units, with moving models around, and the table gets crowded very fast if there are too much units. There's no room to move, no room to hide, everything can see something. Like playing with 5 tanks and 5 infantry units in Firefight gets crowded. Usually you have either those 5 tanks. It works if you have
like a 12x4 or 8x4 or something, but who has time for this, right?
Yeah, and who has the space? Like getting a 6x4 table at home is already tricky sometimes, and
it is.
Doing anything larger is just not suited. Outside those lucky ones who have a dedicated gaming room.
Yes.
Not me.
Not yet for me, but yes, no, it absolutely is a constraint on the size and also on the level of management of your units. Like it can start to be a bit cumbersome to play it. Like it takes too much time and too much effort.
Yeah. So it was a good decision to scale that down instead of increasing the table size, because you can play similar army games in 28mm if you have the space for it, but doing everything a little bit smaller, keeping the table size, and then get those army feelings, like having a full tank platoon or 2 on the table together with the infantry and some larger super heavies. And here I'm very glad that they didn't expand in that too much, because if games only rely on the super heavies or focus on those large monsters, it kind of becomes similar to 28mm games again.
Yes, it defeats the purpose, right? If you have the exact physical same size, like you have a model that is 8mm tall for a giant or something, or 15, you can say, oh no, but it's a super mega giant heavy strider, and it's a 10mm game, but you end up with the same model. So I agree with you. Like not only the models, like a human is smaller, but also the scale that you look at things is different. And so it really gives you a different, more bird view impression of the table, because you have literally more space to maneuver and position things, and it gives you a different gaming experience. That's absolutely true. Otherwise, I mean, Epic is a Mantic game, right? In sci-fi, both of the other games use D8 and command dice. So that's what Epic does as well. If you have played Firefight, the line of sight rules are pretty similar. Like it is a Mantic game in that aspect. And I think the main difference is how your units get orders or like gets to be activated and do stuff. And the way it works with Epic Warpath is at the start of the round, you give an order token to each one of your units. So depending on the gaming mode, this order token can be hidden, like your opponent doesn't see what each of your units will do, or they are directly visible. Or am I right? No, I think they are always hidden, and it's just, do you reveal all of them at the same time or one after the other when you activate the unit? Anyway, so you have to make a decision about what every single one of your unit will do during the turn. You give them an order, and then later you kind of resolve what actually happens. And so it happens in successive phases. So first there's a movement phase, basically, where every unit that received a movement order gets to move. And then there's I don't remember how they call it, I think the Overwatch phase or something like this.
Yeah.
Where units that have received a special, basically stand and shoot, like Overwatch shoot they call it, I believe, gets to shoot before anyone else. And for this, there is an alternate activation. So one player will activate one of the unit that has an Overwatch token, and then the other player activates a unit that has an Overwatch token. And you go back and forth like this, kind of like what you do with firefights. And then you move on with the normal shooting and the melee fighting. And so, yes.
There is a little bit of poker involved to allocate the orders to the units and to estimate what the opponent is going to do with his units.
Yes, that's absolutely right. And also you need to anticipate a bit what's going on. And sometimes you will get it right and potentially also surprise your opponent. And sometimes you will completely misjudge a situation. But then you still have to, go with the action that you allocated to a unit and kind of make do with whatever order they received. And it's also kind of a good indication of, the uncertainty of battles, like maybe a squad or like an area of your army received an order and they go through with it, but then it wasn't necessarily the best order when you have a bit more context about it. And so that really brings something different. Absolutely. Otherwise, the list building, I would say, is very similar to what you have in firefights, meaning it is quite flexible. You have like HQ units, troops, specialists, support, and a new category, which is the super heavy. And the rules to let you pick troops, specialists, support, and super heavies are similar to firefight. You'll see this in detail later. The important thing is you can almost build whatever list you want, which I find interesting, with, of course, some limitations to not just bring super heavies or like that one tank that is very good. So
I have to interrupt you and add that it's still a missed opportunity to not call them uber heavies instead of super heavies. Because I think super heavies is already overused in gaming terms, so something slightly different would have been nice.
They could have come up with a different name, that's true. I'm not sure which one. That's a good thing to think about for Epic Warpath V2, I guess. I think another big difference between Epic and Firefight is that my impression from playtesting, but also when you look at the rules, things are a lot deadlier and go faster. So it doesn't mean that you will table your opponent, right? And it's more that
you still finish the game in 2 hours.
Yes, so there are more things on the table, potentially, and yet you still play in 2 hours. And what that means is even a tank that in Firefight will have like 5 HP and 2 layers of armor and so on and so forth. In Epic Warpath, well, first of all, it's not just one tank, it's a squad of 3 tanks. And each one of them has only 1 damage. And so their armor is higher than infantry, obviously, but it's either there or it's dead. And so it goes a lot faster. And the good thing is there are less tokens on the table as well. Like you don't need to keep track of all the health points of a bunch of units. If something is hit, you just remove a base and that's it. The one exception to the rule, I would say, is the super heavies and some, very specific commanders and so on that can
the
have
centerpiece models.
Yeah, more centerpiece models. Then yes, of course, they don't die the first time. They can have 2, 3, 5 hit points or so. But your tanks will, even a relatively heavy tank, like the Wolverine for GCPS and Plague and Marauders, maybe. These things, they will die just poof in one go potentially. So I think that's an interesting element. Another thing that is new, I think, is there are different type of terrain elements, and different categories of units interact with them differently. So, and I think it's a very good thing for this scale of game. So what I mean is, for example, infantry doesn't treat difficult terrain like a forest the same way as a tank does. And so a forest is a potentially good spot for infantry to go, and tanks have a harder time to go in there. And so it kind of gives more specific jobs or battlefield roles for different types of units. So that's an interesting thing that doesn't exist in firefights. And there are, as I mentioned, command dice, which people from Kings of War love, as we've seen on social media, right?
I think we all love them, except for those in Kings of War. I don't know why.
Right, except a minority, very minor, vocal minority in Kings of War. Anyway, and so in Epic Warpath, each faction has 3 faction orders, and there's one basically special rule per army that kind of gives them more taste. I don't want to deep dive too much into it. My point is, it's a similar mechanism that you have in Firefight, but with a bit more simplicity to make it go faster and let you play at a larger scale. I've also already mentioned that vehicles are usually not in just units of 1 like they are in Firefight, but squads of 3 or potentially more. And infantry is also not based individually, so it's not like every one tiny 10mm guy is on a base, and instead you have for normal infantry 4 of them on one 30mm round base, and then a unit like a squad of infantry will be 3 or 6 bases. And so ultimately your unit of removing stuff is the base, so 4 small guys on it, and you will tend to have 3 or 6 of them. And it's the same thing for like striders, bikes, and so on. There are also usually 2 models per base, and the base is slightly smaller, if I remember correctly. But it's also a squad of 3 strider bases, 3 bike bases. Yes. And then the other type of units are flyers, and larger things like this. They are on slightly larger bases. I think it's 40mm rounds. And they have special rules for how they move and so on. You'll see that when you get the book. I don't want to bore you with it.
So flyers are real flyers and not just skimmers or Hoover tanks, but actual planes.
They must move in a special way, and yes, they feel a lot more like flyers and not just skimmers or like helicopters that you have in Firefight, for example. And super heavies that we've mentioned, they are on an even larger base, and if I remember correctly, it's like 80mm round base, so it's really, really big compared to a small human. So it really gives an opportunity for cool centerpieces. And again, they're not intended like, hey, I have 5 super heavies in my list and that's my list. You will maybe have 1, maybe have 2 in a super, like in larger than usual game, but that's it. It's really a centerpiece and not like, hey, I only play with models on 80mm bases.
And you don't need to use one if you don't want to.
You absolutely don't need or don't have to use one. And I would even say it might make sense to start without them. Yes, absolutely. So yeah, I think the goal here is not to do a review of the rules or like read a rule book that you guys will have pretty soon. It's just to give you kind of a taste of what is the game like and why would you be maybe interested about it, even though you potentially already play Firefight. And so, because I think that was my main concern when I heard about it. It's like, oh, I love 10mm models, but I already have Firefight. So why would I play another sci-fi game that sounds kind of similar? It's played on a 6x4, and there are units and so on. And I can tell you, after playing it quite a few times, play testing it and reading the rules, it is a different experience to Firefight. It clearly is a Mantic game in the Warpath universe, but it is its own thing that is totally worth playing, even if you play Firefight on the side.
So with the 3 sci-fi games now, Dead Zone, Firefight, and Epic Warpath, it's not just different models and a different scale or different table size. It's really different rules with a different feeling to it. In Dead Zone, you really have the feeling to being a team or with 4 or 5 guys trying to survive. In Firefight, you have this platoon command going in with your infantry and your tank support, and in Epic it feels like commanding a force or an army and not just being one guy in there.
Absolutely, it's really like a division and so on. And last thing I wanted to say is if you want to know more about all of this, you should go and check out the articles on the Mantic blog from about a year ago, or, just do like the rest of us and eagerly wait for the rule book to come out very soon, thankfully.
There's still also, I think, the YouTube playlist around where they discuss the different factions, why they are unique or what they do different, and have this how to play videos there. So everyone who just want to watch it and doesn't want to read.
That's also true. Yes, there are a bunch of videos about how the game works, battle reports, and so on. You're absolutely right. Okay, we will be back after a short break.
Hey there, I'm Brian.
And I'm Rick.
From Dead Zone, the podcast.
And you're listening to Mantic Universe Podcast.
For everything Mantic under the sun.
All right, so now that we've given you guys an overview of what Epic is, we wanted to kind of share with you our enthusiasm about it while we are waiting for our pledges to reach us. Because we are both Kickstarter backers, so we pledged for the campaign about a year ago. And so what did you get, Matthias?
I got the 2-player set, also the Lieutenant Pledge, with 2 factions, the rules. Got the XL terrain set, some extra bases, the faction dice for the 2 factions we choose, and 1 extra faction, and that's the Nameless, because we were curious to what they really look like. And of course the STL back to print the resin models on our own. Although I doesn't have a printer yet, but I know some guys who can, so this should be the best way to get things done.
I agree. I think it's an amazing opportunity to expand your factions and expand your armies. So I mean, you guys know already that I love 10mm. Like I talk about it all the time for Kings of War, although it's not an official gaming mode. And so obviously for Warpath, I just went basically all in. So I got the pack of all STL for the specialists and support units, because I think it's an amazingly good option to have. And I got, I don't remember, I think a custom pledge where I took 1 box per faction. Because I think we didn't mention it, but the Kickstarter had for each faction a box with the plastics, and then your option to get the additional resins or STLs for them. And the good thing to know is each faction has only 1 plastic sprue, but on that sprue, it's a mixed sprue, right? And you have all of the core infantry and the main vehicles. And so with 1 sprue, you get a complete coverage of the standard and core units. And so the core box that you get from the pledge is, I think, 4 of these sprues. Is that right?
Yeah, think so too. At least it was said that the core box alone makes about 1,000 to 1,500 points. So going with the complete army should be then, I think, 4 times the frame.
Yes. Also, if you look at the pictures of what is in one army pledge, that makes it. It might be 6. Now that I say it, we should check it out, and we will see it when we get our boxes anyway. But I think the important thing to remember is you're basically all set for your most essential choices with the plastic sprue. And then if you want to spice things up or get more specific stuff, more exotic stuff, then you have either resin or STL if you want to print it yourself. And so, yeah, I got 1 box for each faction because I like the design of everything that I could see, and I wanted a bit of everything. And the STLs to really make complete armies. I did not get the terrain add-on because, well, my pledge was already quite expensive, and also I want to make my own custom terrain later. Like, I want to really design my tables, and so I thought, I don't necessarily need the pre-existing terrain sets.
Yeah, I have to say I love good plastic terrain and always like to build and convert stuff to make more of it. So it's really like having the basic set or here and then try to expand on it with everything else I have, because we have the Dead Zone terrain here, so we can see how this, and they should still work together. I mean, different scale of both, of course, and different sizes, but they should be combinable to really make a large city complex or add some fine details for a Dead Zone set. So it's really like that's why I wanted to have the big set, because it also comes with streets and things like that. So I'm really looking forward to building that one. Also, I already built my own terrain and things like that. But is it like you can never have enough terrain?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. It's a good point. I think really the main reason is I started to freak out at how much money I was spending on this. And so I had to make a decision. Do I want all of the armies, or do I want to also get like terrain and faction dice and so on? And I thought, okay, I can always get faction dice and terrain later when I'm actually playing the game and, figuring out what I want more in detail. And for now, I want to have the option to try out all of the armies. So kind of a different strategy
for
here.
For me, it was the opposite. We said, we like all of the armies, but we're not going to play more than 2 at once anyway, but we need terrain to play the game. So just go with 2 armies, build them, paint them, and then go right into playing and add armies later. But if we want to play now, we need the terrain to do it. And it's easier just to have the plastic ones and build it out of the box. And then the Nameless were added as a third faction just because we were curious to what really comes out on them.
Yeah, because that's true. The Nameless, they really created new concept arts, and they make new skulls like everything else, except the GCPS skulls. They are just a redo in a different scale of what exists for most of the units. So for the Nameless, it's very exciting. Like, they're doing brand new stuff, and that makes sense. So I think it might be interesting to discuss a bit why we even pledged for the Epic Warpath Kickstarter. Like, what brought you into Epic Warpath, Matthias?
Basically, the Warpath before, because I was invested in 2nd edition playing it, and 3rd edition came out. It was a little bit different, and Mantic has planned it with multi-basing in mind, but while this works for Kings of War, it doesn't really work in 28mm sci-fi. And so the easy way to playing it, or to using the rules, was like with 10mm Kings of War, to just use centimeters instead of inches and half the base sizes, and then have your small-scale Warpath game. So I was really excited when the fan announced now it's really coming to 10mm. We really get those 10mm plastic models, so we don't need to improvise anymore to play our Warpath Universe game.
Like, it's already from the start designed like this, and you don't have to adjust it yourself.
Yeah, I don't have to make house rules to get it working, and and improvise, and also I get the models I want, because like 10 mil models in sci-fi are not really available. There are none in plastic.
It's not so easy.
I know there are some in metals, a lot of resin or 3D prints, but nothing of those really feel like Warpath.
No,
So
absolutely.
if you want to play Forge Fathers, you have to improvise with models and rules. So that got me hooked up, because it's not now I finally get my plastics. And
you get everything right from the start, right? That's absolutely true. I mean, in my case, as I mentioned, I love 10 mil. I think it's a very interesting scale for miniatures. Although when I was a teenager, I only played 28. And so 10 mil is more a modern thing for me, like a recent thing. And so I was definitely looking at which sci-fi game in this scale can I play. And so I've looked at other options. The first one that I found was the Net Epic, I think, or whatever it's called, like the 40K Epic, but the community edition
community
for it.
edition from the Epic game from Games Workshop, yeah.
Right. And so this thing, I thought, okay, that could be a good option. That's interesting. Like one day, maybe I'll do it. Obviously, you cannot buy any models for it, so you have to find 3D sculpts online, you can buy them secondhand, sorry. But if you want to buy new models, it's not possible. So there's a bit of a hassle around this. And then, obviously, as I mentioned some time ago, Games Workshop announced that they would do Legion Imperialis, I think it's called. So some people were hoping, oh, great, they're bringing Epic back, right? But it turns out they did not. What they did is it's more, what's it called? 30K? No,
it's Horus Heresy focused, so it's
Space Marine on Space Marine, right?
Yeah.
And for me, I'm a very simple man. If there are no Xenos armies, like no orcs, no weirdos like this, then I'm not interested. Legit, if Games Workshop had brought back Epic, like the proper Epic with orcs, Eldars, Chaos, whatever, Tyranids, and so on.
Something very different. And I was also disappointed that Legion Imperialis was just with Space Marines, because as a former 40K player, I was always interested in the Horus Heresy from the background point of view. And of course, having a Heresy army was like, when I was a teenager, this was like everyone's dream, because that's the most exciting background part from 40K, and everyone here wanted to have one. And then, now you can have one for cheap, kind of. And then they came out what is announced and how it looks like, and it doesn't really feel engaging from a gaming point of view if there are only Space Marines. It's like same armies, different colors, doesn't make a big difference.
I agree. I'm the same. I think some of the models look cool, but there's nothing that really makes me think, oh, I definitely want to buy this and paint it and then play with it. I have the impression, I'm okay with the the 40K universe and stories and so on, but I'm not that big of a fan. Like, I'm not very invested in it, and so it's not as interesting. But on the contrary, when Mantic announced they would do it in the Warpath universe, then immediately for me it's a very interesting proposal. And so, just to close on the topic of other 10 mil sci-fi games, there are some also indie games and so on, but none of them that I found that was really much better or very attractive or with a big community and so on. And so none of them really motivated me enough to just jump in and play it.
Yeah, the other ones, there are some out there that are just available as STLs, which looks interesting, but if it's only for printers, it's hard to get it done in shops or to play public in a club when this is more really for people to do at home.
Yeah, I mean, the good part is... No, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. No, keep...
Go ahead. No, it's just, I wanted to say the good part about this is potentially it's a source for terrain and so on. Because I think when I was scouting the internet for STLs of terrain that I might want to use, I found basically different indie games that made their own terrain for sci-fi 10 mil. So for me, that's a good thing. But I do have a resin printer, so I'm not the majority of gamers, I guess.
Yeah, this is always a space problem. For those who have enough space at home to have a printer and a table, there are other options available and good. And those who need to go out and play at events or play in a store, things look a little bit different. So any game that is able to get into a store because they are available in plastic boxes someone can put on a shelf, it's much more accessible for those. And also a shop has less problems with let you play a game in their store space that they can sell over one that you have to purchase online only.
Of course, yeah, that's a different equation entirely, and so that makes a lot of sense, and it's a very exciting perspective to have Epic Warpath boxes in the local gaming store on the shelf, and then you can go there and play, and then if someone stops by and says, "Oh, I like it, what is it?" you can tell them, "Hey, you just grab a box here," and boom, you can get started and join the fun. Compared to a 3D printing only game, not everyone has a 3D printer and so on and so forth, and then taking it to the shop, it's a bit weird. So I think for me that's one very, very exciting part of Epic Warpath as well. It's really, I love the concept that they came up with of the hybrid model of they have plastic sprues and they have STLs and also cast resin if you want to.
This is also important that not just the STLs you can buy if you don't have a printer. The resins will be available to buy in a box.
Yes.
So there's so everything is available for everyone in this case.
Yes, it's really the best of both worlds in my opinion, because I'm definitely not a 3D printing person that doesn't want to touch hard plastics anymore. I much prefer hard plastics if they are available and well designed, because it's a lot more convenient and potentially it's cheaper as well.
It should be.
There's less work than printing it on your own, and you have to maintain your machine, and then you break the screen and you spend another 50 euros to replace it, and then one evening to replace it, and so on and so forth, versus you get a box with sprues instead. Well, you just buy the box with sprues, and right away you have excellent models. So I think it really is a strength of what they do.
It's also interesting to have the 8 factions. We have 6 alien or Xenos factions among them, which is also playing a part here, because we have not just this human focused or gaming, like most games out there that are in the small scale have humans as the center faction,
right,
or army.
I think,
and we have 2, the GCPS, the normal human soldiers, and the enforcer as the superhuman specialists, but everything else is aliens of different kinds. Blake could be seen as still human-based army, but this is really more like the zombie faction, if you want it that way, or the sci-fi undead. And
yes, I think that's a good point. There's really a bit of everything for everyone. It's not just you have one archetype of armies and that's it, and just you paint them blue, red, or purple, or whatever Space Marine colors exist. You really have different things and different aesthetics and different gameplay. Like an Enforcer's army will be quite different from a Veer-myn army, for example, right? Or from a Plague army. And so that makes a much richer environment and, things that you can play.
And in case someone doesn't like the Warpath universe or want a different theme, this can be done, because you have this normal human sci-fi soldiers that can be any human sci-fi army you want with those aliens. So playing Starship Troopers in the small scale is as same possible as doing this aliens movie feature here.
Yes,
with the different
absolutely true.
plastics.
Yes, if you want to, that also works. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, that's exciting. So, yeah, what are you looking forward to? I know I have a pretty large pledge coming my way sometime in late March or something. So I think I need to focus a little bit. And my plan is I will build 2 forces to begin with, so that I can be ready to play as soon as possible. I'm pretty sure I will do GCPS because that's kind of like my favorite faction in Warpath, like in firefights. And I need to pick an antagonist for them. So I'm not sure if I do Plague or maybe Marauders or I don't know. What about you? What's your plan?
So the next plan is to get the armies done to start playing. I choose Forge Fathers for me as a long-term 12 player. That's what I got, and I'm looking forward to. My son got Redkin or Veer-myn. He plays Redkin in Kings of War and was really excited to see that the sci-fi army coming up. So we got the Reds for him, and we're looking forward to actually doing the models, as I had the chance to see some of them live during last year's Clash of Kings. When we visited the Mantic HQ, we got the usual tour through the HQ.
Mm-hmm.
And we got a glimpse at they were actually doing the master models for the resin molds at the moment, and we could look up closely on some of those, and they really put effort into making it great models. It's
nice. I'm jealous now. So you really got a sneak peek of what they will look like, huh?
Yeah. And I have to say, those are still made for gaming. So they try to make it as less parts possible, so you don't need to assemble it too much for it. So they might not look as detailed as some other scale model likes, but still good enough for gaming.
Yes,
and
so they are nice models, but they are gaming pieces, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's really a strong part of it.
I see
that's
this
what
as
I
an
want
advantage, because I need to have when I want to have a week of building models in the small scale, I get me a small scale model kit and curse among everything, because everything will glue on the fingers and not where it should be. So having as little to...
It's a different hobby, absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
If I want a gaming hobby, I want the stuff to game, so it should be something to assembly so that you still can convert or modify it, but not too much that building is the main hobby when I want a game.
Absolutely. And I think for Epic, they really did a good job with it when you see both, like, you have everything core, let's say, like the most essential on the plastics frame, and then the resin models, as you said, are designed nicely, but really... our gaming pieces, I think they really achieved it right here. And I hope we see
anyone want to glue 10 mil resin models together.
You don't want to have a multi-part 10 mil infantry model, that's certain. Or even a vehicle, you don't want to have 10 pieces, right? So no, absolutely. I'm really looking forward to having, the companion to start building some lists. And the PDF, because I think they said they will release the PDF of the rules and the army factions and so on to the backers even before the physical items are delivered. So I'm very much looking forward to that.
Yeah, so we should get the PDF early, or at least when everything starts shipping, we should get the rules digital as download, and so that everyone has it in the same time, independent from the shipping time.
Yes. Yeah, and the other thing that I really like is I love that there are, from day one translations in like 5 languages total. I think there's German, French, Italian, Spanish, and then English obviously is the original language. And so right from day one, you have a pretty good support, localized support. And so I certainly hope that it helps the game really take off in Germany and worldwide, like not just in the US and the UK. because obviously for Firefight and Kings of War, I see in France, yes, there are a lot of players, but there would be more players if the support of the local language was a bit more, let's say, consistent and reliable. And I'm sure for Germany and probably Austria, it's a similar story. People speak English, most of them, some of them.
Mostly everyone can speak English or read the English rules. It's just easier to do it in the native language because sit down in the evening, want to relax, read something. It's obviously your native language, the easier to do.
Yes, and also if you want to play with your kids, right?
Yeah, so having something in German available to play with the kids makes things a lot easier. Because they still learn English in school, but then you have to wait until they actually are in teenagers, and then it gets tricky to get them into gaming again. So the earlier the better, and that translation helps a lot. And it's
that
also something I think a different feeling from as a customer, because it's not necessary to have them translated, but it feels like the company cares about you when they do and offer it to you.
Absolutely. No, I completely agree with you on this.
And this is something Mantic missed in the past, and sometimes they had bad luck too.
Yes.
But this is like, we have, I think they started with Dungeon Saga Origins to focus on translations again, and now it looks like it's working with the distribution and things like that. Also Halo got translated, so...
Absolutely. I think they've started to work more seriously on it, or like they've invested more energy into it. And I think it will, in the long term, really pay off and bring them more customers in different countries. I know, for example, there are quite a few backers of Epic Warpath locally, like around me in Berlin, in Germany. And so I really want to, work to support the emerging community, like create a gaming group that plays Epic Warpath regularly, and also, kind of make it clear to someone that goes to the gaming shop or sees a German blog about tabletop gaming in German. This is the latest thing, and it's cool. Then they can buy a box, like a starter set with rules in German, and they can get started with it, and then they can find players in their area, because there's always kind of a virtuous circle. If a game is actively played, then more people can think about joining and start playing it, and then they basically sustain the fact that the game is actively played, and then bring in even more people. And it's kind of hard to get this started. But once you have it, like if you have a good initial impulse, then you have a chance of, having a healthy and active community, or maybe not necessarily just in your city, but within 1 or 2 hours of traveling. And so maybe every now and then you can travel to a tournament or like a gaming event and meet different people.
It's me living in the middle of nowhere. Kind of, so at least an hour of driving is always involved if I don't want to play at home. So having a store nearby, stocking the game, it would still be an hour driving, but it would be worth it doing. And I have seen stores often decline smaller indie games if there's no translation available, because this is like, they can order it for you, but to have it on the shelf, it need to be in the local language.
Yeah, because they have no advantage for the customer, right? Like if they see a game that is only in English or, doesn't have any localized version, then maybe the store owner will think, well, why would my customer buy it here? They can buy it online and I have zero added value to it. Versus if there's also a localized version and then more of a community around it, then the store will probably want to have it on the shelves, because then people come and play it, and while they play, maybe they will think,
I want... Someone sees in the store and thinks, I buy that one, because everyone who just knows already that he wants one won't go into the store to get it, but buy it online anyway. So there's no advantage to have it on the shelf, but it's also a little bit tricky with the Mantic Games because those are very good casual games. So there's no need to go to the store. You don't need much terrain. You don't need much space. You don't need a lot of books. You can everything at home and play with the kids, family, or friends, and like no real reason to go outside and make it public. So it could be that there are a lot more people playing that game around, but just not visible to you because it's like
right.
a game they
they
play
don't need
once
to.
or twice. It's yeah.
That's a good point. I don't know exactly what it goes. I definitely think there are a lot more people who play Mantic Games in Germany or even in Berlin that I know about than what I know about. I mean, because they just play with a couple of friends or like their cousin or their kids, and they don't necessarily feel the need to connect with a larger group of people. But I still think if the game is quite successful and really brings something like a good value to the table, like the cool models, good rules, a wide range of models available, affordable boxes, because I don't know yet how expensive the starter box will be, but I expect it to be reasonably cheaper and definitely not 200 euros like the Legion Imperialist starter. I think is very expensive.
Yeah,
and
you
so
need a lot
it's a different
of models
story.
for that one. I think Matt said once that they're looking forward that the single plastic core box will make you an army to play with. So it is really an army box and not just a starter box. And
yes,
so
I think that's
reasonably
totally
cheap.
true.
Even if the single box costs 100 euros, if one box is everything you need, you're still just 100 euros for the army. So this is it will be reasonably priced. It's not just so to start playing and have fun. It won't be expensive. Just if you really like it and want to collect more, of course, there's the resin, there are the 3D prints that can get expensive if you go heavy into that one, but then it's not needed.
Yes, it's not. You must start there before you can start having good games. I think that's a good point for it. There's one thing that I was a bit worried about as well, because I think Mantic has done the mistake in the past, in particular with Dreadball, I think, of, you release everything as a Kickstarter, and then people spend hundreds of euros or dollars or pounds on the Kickstarter, and then they don't need to buy anything else ever for the game, and so it kills the momentum. And then no store wants to have anything on inventory because people have got everything they need from the Kickstarter for the next 3 years of their life playing it full time. And so I think for Epic, so Mantic knows to not do that mistake. And so obviously they have done a very large release, but I can tell you without too many spoilers, already in the playtesting, there were a few unit entries and things that were clearly marked as not part of the Kickstarter and not part of the Wave 1, which is basically the Kickstarter. And so the Kickstarter is really here to establish a very good baseline of, coverage of all of the profiles and units for the core factions. But there is more stuff coming later for Epic Warpath. And so it's not like a one and done, like a hit and run. Here's the Kickstarter, and we abandon it and never touch it again, and then go do another thing. I really think they will have Epic Warpath, on their catalog, on the website, and intend to, from this pretty good start, keep growing the game and adding new stuff to it. So that's very exciting, I think.
Yeah, I think that the Kickstarter was important to get everything in plastic for the Wave 1, because plastic molds are expensive. And Ronnie also said in the last Mantic video they released, I think yesterday, he admitted that with Dreadball doing everything on the Kickstarter and have nothing from the store was his mistake. And they're now correcting it for Dreadball as well. That gets a new release coming up. So Mantic learns from their mistakes in the past and try to correct them and be better. So it should work out for Epic Warpath very well now, because
I hope so. Yeah, I mean, Mantic still has tons of issues at different levels. Like, they're not a perfect company by any means, but to their credit, definitely they are learning from their mistakes and doing things better and better. And to me, Epic Warpath is really setting the bar pretty high, and I'm very excited for it. So yeah, I mean, now the next thing for me is really, get my terrain ready. As I mentioned, I didn't buy too much with my pledge because I said, I will do some before the pledge even arrives, and I haven't. So it means I only have 1 or 2 months now to get my hobby time, focusing on 10mm terrain for Epic Warpath. But that's the next big thing.
I'm also looking to build some terrain in advance, but for me it will be the classic papercraft ones, because
that's a good option.
For other games as well, a lot of stuff available also in 28mm and things that you can easily scale down, print it out. You have that colored terrain ready to play when things arrive. And because it's paper, it's not expensive, and while sad to throw it away, it's quickly done, and if it's damaged, you throw it away, and if you don't need it, you can throw it away or fold it back together. It's not something that you have and need to keep.
Yes, it's less of an investment of energy and money and everything. That's a good point. That's a pretty good plan. I might steal some of that idea. But yeah, and I think we already see tiny signs here and there that some people are starting to remember that they will be receiving a Kickstarter pledge soon. Obviously, that's why we're here today making an episode, but
I mean, we started because we started talking about again and what to do and what to plan. So
absolutely, and I think it will be exciting to see the community, start, get more involved with the game. And there's a book coming out with novels that are brand new for Warpath that come with the pledge. And so for me, it's really something I'm looking forward to from the gaming perspective, from the stories perspective, and making cool armies. So interesting times. It's a good thing to have this to look forward to, I think.
I think we got quite some interest in social media communities at the moment. Also, we have there's a Warpath subreddit where people already start to get together. There's the Discord, the MUP universe, the Mantic fans, and a dedicated Warpath Discord.
That's true. There is a separate Discord for Warpath too. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the Facebook Fanatics group should already start building up, I think. And I'm not on Facebook, so I cannot tell that one. I'm avoiding it.
That's a good thing. Yes, I haven't checked. There probably is one. There must be one. That must be in it, but I haven't seen. I think it's really part of the release coming out and so on. I think Mantic also will start talking more about it sometime in March or so, right around when it's arriving with all of the backers of the project, and it also becomes available in stores. So yes, exciting times ahead. All right, we will come back after a short break.
This is Andy from Mantic Games, and you're listening to the Mantic Universe podcast. So much universe, so little time.
All right. Now, before we just conclude this episode, we have a few listener questions because we've asked you guys if you have already some things in mind about Epic Warpath. And so we got a few questions. So first of them, Martin, friend of the pod, asks, what do you guys think about sort of ambush boxes for Epic Warpath? Or a 2-player set for it, and would it be possible to play Epic Warpath on a smaller board like 3x3 or even 2x2? So, as we've discussed it previously, because of how the plastic sprues are done for Warpath, I think by nature the army boxes are already kind of what the ambush boxes are in Kings of War. And so I expect these to be both quite affordable and also very much usable as they are. Like you don't need any resin at all if you want for your first few games or to already a good level. I think the 2-player set is already something they've announced, right?
Yeah,
Matthias, do you remember?
It was announced as 2-player set, or the Lieutenant Pledge I got was announced as 2-player set from the Kickstarter, like having one core box of 2 factions. So I expect something like this to be available at the beginning with 2 faction boxes and the rules in one starter box at a discount. Maybe they start with the Poster Boys, Enforcers and Blake at the beginning and release other deals or things later. Maybe also a smaller box, because like you already said, it's a single frame with all the units multiple times in the box, so there's nothing that prevents it from releasing just half an army box with 2 frames instead of 6 for a smaller, cheaper entry-level box. So I think this is a possibility we will see. Yeah,
that could work. And about playing on a smaller side, I think it's kind of like Firefight in that regard, in that the game is really designed and play-tested to play on 4x4 and 6x4 for larger point sizes. But if you play on a 3x3, it's totally doable. It's just you will have a maybe smaller deployment area, and probably you don't want to try to play 2,000 points on 3x3 because it would be a bit crowded. But if you have a bit less space at home or want to play a smaller point size game, then playing on 3x3 is probably something that works. 2x2, I think you get into a different territory, like something that really is not really designed for, and so weapon ranges and movement and so on might become a bit too disturbed for it. But to be honest, I haven't tried it.
2x2, it's really a small size, and I think games are written with a specific point size or army size in mind, so balance can be way off if you go under that one. So I don't think that something like 200 points or 500 points game will work well without any house.
It will not work at all. You probably cannot even build a list that makes any sense.
But in general, when you already have the models, you can scale down Firefight and use them and play Firefight with 10 mil models on 2x2.
Absolutely. No, that's definitely an option. So that's the next thing I wanted to say. With the range from Epic Warpath, you can instantly play small-scale firefights, and so use the firefight rules, firefight basing, and so on and so forth. Maybe you can even cheat a little bit, and instead of having 4 individually based infantry models, as you would have in Firefight, you have just one base of Epic Warpath that has 4 guys on it, and then, find some house rules that work with it. But ultimately, my point is, Epic Warpath on 3x3, yes, I'm pretty confident it will work with a small point size, like as a quick game or intro game and so on. 2x2, no, you go into something different. Okay, and then we have more questions from Adrian Scott. So the first one is, what size bases are we looking at for infantry? I've wanted to know this since the Kickstarter was announced. So I think I've mentioned it already, and guys, don't quote me on this, like don't start building everything just based on this, because the real rules will drop very soon, so you could probably wait a few more weeks. But basically what I remember is most of the infantry is on 30mm round bases, from, let's say, the zombies with 4 models per bases to, let's say, leapers, so like more beefy models, like 2 models per base. And then some of the stuff like striders, bikes, as I mentioned. I think aberrations, maybe, but I'm not sure. I forgot now. Those ones are on 25mm round bases, so it's slightly different. Yes, so Adrian, I have answered the question, and you will see. You've waited for almost a year for it. You'll have to wait for a few more weeks before you get your final answer that you can base your work on.
The final one will be correct. Rather wait another month for a correct answer than our guess.
Exactly, yes. Because I can tell you what I've seen in playtesting, but I don't know if they've made any last-second change during editing or something like this. So you shouldn't trust too much what I would say now, and you will hear the official answer very soon anyway. Any discussion on basing in general? I know I'm hoping to do something more than just having the infantry, standing on flat grounds, maybe adding trees, rocks, barricades to stand behind. Is anyone else planning this? So when I saw this question, I thought it's a very good point. And also posted a picture of a test base that is done, and it looks really, really nice. I have to say, basing for smaller scale isn't something that I've experimented with yet, because I've only done my Kings of War armies, and like the basing is just pack as much models as you can on the base. But that's something interesting to consider. I've been more focusing on, okay, how do I want to build terrain and what terrain I want to do? Since Epic Warpath is a reasonable game and doesn't use true line of sight, like there are formal definitions of what a model can see, you can go crazy for basing and do whatever you want. So I'm definitely looking forward to what you'll do.
Multi-basing has always the opportunity for doing mini dioramas and conversions like this. So I mean, the plastic models will come with this small caps or fixed bases underneath that will fit in the holes in the multi-base, but you don't need to use that. You can do anything else as well, and like replacing one model in the multi-base with a tree or a barricade and things like that.
Absolutely.
And just use
yes.
That's all possibility. Also going for more. You don't need to use the commander with the tactical rock glued on. You can do crazy things with those and make like small command centers and things like that, or adding more models, because just that we say 4 models per base for basic infantry doesn't mean the command base cannot have 6 of them.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
It's not true line of sight, and it's not model counting that 4 models means 4 health points or something like that. So you can go crazy and do whatever you want here. And I think it's a good opportunity to really make this standing out and not just like do as by the box art, but really do something, make it your army. That's also why I prefer bases for tanks. I know a lot of people don't like it. I mean, I played Flames of War during some time, and there also was the controversy, should vehicles use bases or not, because some people say it looks stupid when they have bases and better without, and I was one of those who said, yeah, but without bases you cannot make themed bases, and if everything is on a snow base with trees, rocks and grass and your vehicles down, then it looks odd. So also
that's
having a tank
point.
breaking through a barricade looks awesome. So this is something that you should keep in mind when this is a point of discussion.
That's an interesting aspect, because I would tend to do vehicles without bases. Like my bolt action armies have no bases for vehicles. My 40k models, like vehicles, don't have a base. I mean, the more recent ones do have a base, because GW basically now puts everything on bases as much as they can, at least. And so my preference in general would be without it, but you have convinced me right now. Like, I will reconsider it for my own armies. So yeah, interesting to see what happens. When I have the models in my hands, I can make more of a decision about it, I think.
I mean, I ordered some extra bases so that I can experiment with things. So
nice.
We will make some test stuff and put it on for everybody to see, just for some crazy things what you can do.
That's good. All right, so next question that he has is, what factions are you going to start with and why? I've gone with Forge Daddies and GCPS, though I'm undecided as to which I'll do first. It will probably come down to which one I decide on the paint scheme for. So as I said, I will do GCPS because that's just my favorite faction, period. And something else just to be a good antagonist and like something else from a hobby perspective. And the reason why is really because I just want to be able to play as soon as possible, like have a small starter army, 1,000 points, maybe 1,500 points or whatever, as soon as I can get them done and just get games in. So that's my main decision criteria.
I mean, I will do Forge Fathers, as already said, because dwarf player stays a dwarf player and will be always one, and they look awesome in Firefight and Dead Zone already. So this is really getting now a Forge Fathers tank army on the table will be something. Also, I have to say, I have considered GCPS simply because the Lancer tank is now coming finally in plastic.
Yes.
We have waited so long for it, and now we finally get it. And this might be a future army for me to have.
You'll see. I mean, that's kind of the good side of it. And it's like the same for all 10 mil systems that I've played. It's reasonably easy to get into it, like get a new army, because you don't need to buy too much for a small force. And it's very easy to store it and get it painted. So yeah, you'll see. It could be after the dwarves and the nameless when you want something different. Also, I think the playstyle of GCPS and Forge Fathers will be quite different. So that's another good reason to start a different faction, I think. All right, and so last question that he asked. What super heavy are you most excited about? Personally, I'm most keen on the Forge Fathers Drop Fortress, or whatever it's called. The idea of just throwing down a sci-fi castle from orbit is just too appealing. I agree. I think the super heavy is just a design space opening that you couldn't do this in Firefight. It just wouldn't be realistic to have these models on Firefights. Although I'm pretty sure some people will be stupid enough. No, people will be stupid enough to upscale the 10 mil models and print them at 28 mil scale and have like a gigantic Forge Father Drop Fortress and use it as a terrain piece or something like for a special scenario. But yeah, I mean, for me, from what I can say from playtesting, like I didn't play all of the factions in playtesting. I focused on a few things. And I've played against a bunch of different things. The super heavies were really nice. Like they really bring a different layer, like one additional cherry on the cake type of thing. The models also look really nice from the renders that we've seen. So there will be interesting hobby elements. And in terms of gameplay, it's kind of adding, one new exciting thing. But it's still pretty hard to pick a favorite. I think what I can say is I'm pretty sure my resin printer will be very busy once I get the STLs for my pledge, because although I probably won't start all of the armies in parallel, I might just print some of the super heavies just for the fun of it, and contemplate the beauty of a massive Forge Father Drop Fortress, even if I don't make them right away. Definitely something interesting for me.
I'm looking forward to the Drop Fortress as well, being Forge Fathers as my chosen army, but I'm not decided yet which super heavy I like most, because they're good looking ones for every faction, and I have to say one that I'm most excited kind of is still the Techno Nest from the Veer-myn.
That's a good one, yeah.
I'm really looking forward to how this one turns out, how the details look like, and how it is to build, because this gives this Ninja Turtles vibes from the past with the Technodrome.
You're right. That's also a good point, that in a way, for me, the super heavies are like its narrative crack, right? They bring something interesting in terms of gaming, but it's also so cool. Like you can tell very interesting stories that just don't exist in firefights. Like that's like the Drop Fortress. I can imagine, special scenario, like what's going on around it, and oh my god, they are really serious about it, and they deployed, their secret weapon. Or as you said, the Veer-myn. That's really they have the big monstrosity, and so it really is. It brings something additional to the game, and for me, as
really
all of them,
at the upscaling kind of thing, I see the Techno Nest from the Veer-myn would make a really good Dead Zone table. Just get an FDM printer, upscale it to 2x2 on a Doppler board, and then play Dead Zone on it. It's
yes, I want to do that. See, that's so exciting. Yeah, it's really, really cool. All right, yeah, so those are the questions we got. So thanks, guys, for sending us questions. Keep them coming for future episodes. You can always join the discussion either on the MUP Facebook group and also on the Discord server. We'll just have the links in the description. And I just wanted to mention I have a Mastodon account like on the Fediverse. And although there isn't so much of it yet there, I'm enjoying the tabletop content that I find. And, it's like every social platform. Just join us there, and there just will be more content, and I'll be happy to chat about all things Mantic on this platform that, in my opinion, has tons of advantages compared to, let's say, Facebook, without naming names. All right. I think we're about done. Do you have any closing words, Matthias, about, getting into Epic Warpath?
First of all, it was a pleasure to join my first episode with Epic Warpath here, and looking forward to making many more, also about different topics. And I'm looking forward to keep all the listeners excited about our hobby and the progress in Warpath universe, and see what gets released next.
That's very good. Yeah, it was very, very nice of you to take the time to join me on this episode. And I'm looking forward to future episodes as well. Speaking of future episodes, we are already talking to some potential guests. Like people from Mantic, or maybe people from the rule committee, or stuff like this. And as always with the Mantic Universe podcast, if you have something you want to share with us, or if you want to get involved and come tell us about something you've been doing really within the Epic Warpath game and around it, you're most welcome to join us on future episodes from this series, and for other stuff Mantic related on any other MUP episodes. So yes, dear listeners, we're very happy that you've listened to the end of the episode. We hope you had a good time, and until next time, so much universe, so little time.